Hi, 308. So I'm going to quickly go through all of the different stages that we did this morning, just so you can have a quick review, and then I can do some more detailed ones later. So what I have pulled up is this was kind of the finished one that we did. So this has some of the top stitching on it, some of the shadows. Before we did the top stitching, here's the one with the shadow work that we did. This was it before the shadows, working with just filling and pasting into, so I'll go over that again. This is our rough outline fixed. This was the document that you had to work with, and this is kind of where I started. So I am going to start here. That way we can kind of remember all the steps that we went through. So in my layers, remember I showed you that this was the original, and I had made some changes to the sides and moved the buckle to the middle. And the way in which I did this was I created a new layer. On that layer, I did use my pencil tool to start to draw. I had this on when I was drawing. Start to draw the shape that I wanted. Now remember, it works differently than Illustrator in that you don't have to have technically closed shapes with the pen tool. As long as they're visually closed, that's okay. What I did in the one that I gave you was I had fixed any spots that were open. Because right now, if I were to fill this, there are some spots where there is a break in the line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to fix that and then move on from there. So I think this makes sense that if I was to fill this, obviously my fill would go all the way through. So because I used the pencil tool, I can certainly come back in here with the pencil tool and simply, oops, I'm in the wrong color though. I was still in my stitching. And I used the Wacom tablet for this, but you can use your mouse as well. So I went through and closed up, zoomed in and closed up any of the areas that I needed to. So now we're on to this one, which is, this was the document from previous. So this is the line. I fixed the line. I shut my image of the backpack off, and then I added another layer that was simply a white background. What I did here was I kept these two eyeballs on, went in to merge visible, and I merged those. So now these are one layer, and I can use those to go to fill. So that's what this one is here. So I'm going to go back to my other one so we can remember how we did all of that work in the filling. And you guys have this with all my layers, so you should be able to go back in and open it all up. So here, the way that we did this was we took the sketch layer, we duplicated it. You can do it multiple ways. I brought it down into the layers section, sketch copy. Remember, here we need to do something to this layer so that way it's just the outline that stays on top of our work. Go here to multiply. Now what that does is, this is my outline that's always going to rest on the top of it. Go back to my sketch layer. Remember, when we're filling with a pattern or a color, we want to select from that sketch layer all the time. To do that, we're using the magic wand. Again, super important that contiguous is checked. Right here, I'm just going to pick out the areas that I want to color. I had done this body, the front body, as a separate one because I wasn't sure what color I wanted it, but I want it to be green, so I can just go ahead and make these selections. Okay, my swatches. And remember, we use a new layer. And I'm going to fill it with the foreground color. Okay. So you can see that I chose it. I selected it from the sketch layer. And then I filled it on the other layer. Let's do it again. I'm going to deselect. I'm going to go to my sketch layer, and I'm going to select the flap of the bag, but I want to actually fill it with that pattern. And remember, the issue I had when I just filled it with the pattern was that it wasn't aligned the way I wanted it to be. So I am going to do that. I'm going to create a new layer that's just going to become a swatch that I can scale and then actually discard. So I'm going to, on this layer, I'm going to create a rectangle. I'm going to fill it with a pattern that I had created. And this is my pattern. I have lots of them in here, but this is the one that I want. Gone okay. And I want to transform it. About there. Can move it over. I'm going to edit, copy. Eyeball goes off. Go back to my sketch layer. Magic wand. Select the shape that I want. New layer. Edit, paste special, paste into. And remember, the cool thing about this is if I'm on that layer, I can use my move tool and I can actually move my swatch. So I can work on, I think I want it right there. Okay. So now, after I get all of this done, the next thing you want to do is to think about working with the shadows and the stitching. So I can get rid of this layer, this swatch layer I don't need anymore, or if I think I'm going to fill it into other places, I can keep it as a working document. So now I'm going to move on to the, let's see, the outline with shadows. So again, we were just working with keeping all of our layers separate, so that way on whichever layer we have activated, that's the one that we can work on with the shadows. So since I've already done a lot of this green, I'm going to go up here to this pink, which I think is my piping layer. Yeah, that's my pinkish color. I'm going to zoom in, and I'll just review how we did this. We used the dodge and burn tool. I tend to start with the burn because I have a better sense of where my shadows go than I do the highlights. So in here, it works similar to a lot of our other tools. I can make it smaller. And I'm just going to start to shade in the area that I want. Now remember, because we have it selected by the shape, I don't necessarily have to worry about right here, because the area below that, I'm not affecting at all. And the way the dodge and burn tool works, it kind of gets more intense the more you go over it. So down here, I'm going to make my brush size a little bit bigger, and I'm just going to hit the edge of this, and see I'm not getting on the pattern or on the green because I only have that purple pinkish color selected. I can come in and maybe do a little bit in some of these areas. Down here, along the bottom. It's so cool that you don't have to worry about going into the other areas because you have it already separated. All right, so there's that. And I could choose to do a little bit of a highlight. Let me make it smaller. There's my highlight. Okay, and then the last one that we talked about was with stitching. This one I had done a little stitching over here. We'll do that. I chose my color. I can choose it from here. I could use the eyedropper from the layer and pick the color that way. That's what I had done during our class, but I'm going to use it this way with the pencil. And again, I can change the size of the pencil and say I wanted to add like a this is a bigger, brighter, but that could be my double row of stitching. And when you zoom out, you can kind of see the effect a little bit better. So those are all the steps that we did. The drawing with the Wacom tablet in Photoshop, having visually closed shapes so that way we could fill, taking that sketch layer, making a duplicate copy, multiplying it, then going back to that original copy using our magic wand tool to select certain areas to fill with either solid colors or patterns, to then work again with all the layers, to use the dodge and burn tool, adding things like freeform stitching, saving it in Photoshop, getting rid of the background, and then placing it in Illustrator for your layout board. So hopefully this was a quick review of what we have done. I'm going to post this right away.